James Cameron, the famous director who, made Titanic, Avatar 1, was promoting his new movie, Avatar The Way of the Water, or Avatar 2, which has a huge marine conservation message, when he came under fire for attending one of the promotional premieres in Japan. The promotion included a captive dolphin show at an aquarium, which infuriated many environmentalists who wanted to hear from Cameron's reason for attending the premiere with the captive dolphin show. We're going to talk about that on this episode of the Speak Up for the Ocean Blue podcast. James Cameron did make some comments through an email to a friend, and how these events, are going to talk about how these events are hard to navigate more than people think. We're going to get into it on this episode of the Speak Up for the Ocean Blue podcast. Let's start the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to another exciting episode of the Speak Up for the Ocean Blue podcast. I am your host, Andrew Lewin. This is the podcast where you find out what's happening with the ocean, how you can speak up for the ocean, and what you can do to live for a better ocean by taking action. Happy New Year, everybody. It is 2023 officially. Although when I'm recording this, it's December 30th. But I'm trying to get ahead a little bit this week while I'm off from my day job. That's right, I do have a day job. I'm on vacation and I'm doing some podcasting in the meantime. And it's the new year. It's 2023. So, last year was an interesting year, to say the least. Lots of things happened. I took last week off from podcasting. I wasn't sure if I was going to do it or not, so I didn't mention anything. And you know what? It just felt right. I just wanted to kind of reevaluate things. And by the way, by reevaluate things, I do have a listener survey. So I'd love to hear from you. If you go to speakupforblue.com/survey, you can fill out that survey. I would love to hear your thoughts on the podcast. Where you listen, how you listen, what you think of the episodes, and so forth. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. But I'm going to be making a couple of changes over this new year, and I'll talk about that on Friday's episode, what I'm going to be doing to live for a better ocean, but through the podcast. And you're going to see some changes coming up as soon, and some additional things coming into play. So it's going to be a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to that. But for this episode, we're going to be talking about a movie and a director of said movie, Avatar: The Way of the Water. I went to see it on Wednesday, this past week, and it was amazing. It was probably one of the best movies. I'm describing it as one of the best movies I've seen in a long time. And I'm a big Marvel fan. I'm a big movie fan, and not like not from an artistic point of view. I just like to be entertained. But I really enjoyed this movie. I love the graphics. I love the storyline. It had, like I said, it had a huge marine conservation message, which of course is why I probably like the movie even more. It had its ups and downs in terms of emotional reactivity. And it was really, really good. Like, I went to see it with my dad. We went to see it in the IMAX, which I highly recommend seeing it in IMAX if you're good to go with IMAX. I know, like, my wife doesn't like motion sickness and stuff, so that doesn't always help when you're doing an IMAX. But it was just really great. The whole experience was wonderful. It was interesting, just as a side note, when you're in the theater, there's a lot of, all the actors are promoting their different movies. They're all talking about watching it in the theaters because it provides a different experience. I agree. I find I get more excited to watch a movie in the theaters than I do at home. Maybe it's just because I'm out and I haven't been out in a while just due to the pandemic. But it was just nice to be out and to enjoy this on the big screen, as well as all of the, I guess, advantages and features that an IMAX screen and an IMAX experience presents. So that was great. But the movie had this huge marine conservation message. It was, I'm not going to give away any spoilers, but there's a lot of ocean involved on the planet, in Pandora, I guess is the planet it's called. And so there's a big ocean part in the movie, and so you just see the imagination of the creators of this movie in terms of the different species and stuff, as well as whales, as well as a lot of things. Now the movie's been out for a while, so there might be some unintended spoilers here, but they have whales and they have sharks and they have almost like what look like prehistoric type of animals, and deep sea animals that are in the shallows. It was really, really visually visually appealing and stimulating. I loved it. It was just a lot of fun. But the movie was great. And I said, marine conservation message, basically, it also had a lot of social messages to it. But in terms of conservation, one thing I found is that this movie said, hey, the people who have been living by the sea in the forest have a specific connection to the planet, to the resources that the planet provides them. And they know how to take care of it best. And when you have people, humans, come in and want to exploit that for their own greedy means, it is destructive. And that's what this movie shows. I mean, that's what Avatar is really about. And it really had this underlying message of sort of indigenous-led conservation, which we've talked about before on this podcast. When we had Humna and Angelo come in and talk about the importance of indigenous-led conservation, I feel like this had a huge message for that. And, saying that, look, we should be looking at, indigenous people to show us the way of the water, of the forest, of the planet, and say, hey, how can we live in harmony with this planet? How can we take care of it properly? Because a lot of the local people, a lot of the indigenous people around the world on our planet know more than, people coming in and saying, this is how we need to conserve, this is how we need to protect. And so I think there's a really interesting message in there from James Cameron, from the writers and so forth on that. But that's not what we're here to necessarily talk about. I mean, it's the underlying reason of what, we're looking at. But the real controversy here is that James Cameron, in his promotional tour, along with the other actors, Zoe Saldana, I forget the guy, Sam Worthington, I think, is the main actor, and they were doing this promotional tour. And so they attended a premiere in Japan. I don't know where in Japan, but it was in Japan. And they went to this event, and it had like a huge crowd. People were there to see the actors. It was like a red carpet, but then it turned into what looked like was going to be a show. And when you see, I haven't seen the video, but I've seen pictures of said show. And Sigourney Weaver was there as well, of the show. And there was a big aquarium. It was at an aquarium. There's this big tank, and a bunch of dolphins came out with their trainers and performed a bunch of tricks. Now, we all know that captive marine mammals is not a good thing. We all know the torture that it is from a psychological and emotional standpoint, also a physical standpoint in some cases. And we know that it's not good for dolphins and orcas and so forth. So the controversy is, hey, we have James Cameron, who's this huge director. He's a vegan. He's very much into conservation, especially of the deep sea, through his work with the movie Titanic, as also the documentary Titanic, and his work with, diving down in the deep sea. He's gone down to the Mariana Trench. He's done a lot of work on submersibles, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But there was that, he's this big environmentalist and advocate for the ocean and the planet. I mean, the message of the movie Avatar is all about saving the ocean, saving the planet, and has a huge, huge message around that. And here he is attending this premiere where there's a dolphin show. So a lot of environmentalists were infuriated, saying, hey, why is he doing this? Why didn't he just either walk out? Why didn't he refuse? Why did he do this? Why did he do that? Why did he do this? And so a lot of people, this has happened in mid-December, so a lot of people are saying, what's going on? We need to hear from James Cameron himself to say, what's your reasoning for all this? Why are you doing this? Why did you not say anything? And so there's no video that I know of what this is, what happened. So it was hard to, you couldn't hear him say anything, but he did speak at the event. People asked questions and so forth. Everybody looked like they were having a good time. Unfortunately, though, this controversy kind of there is a video. I'm sorry, there is a video. I just didn't listen to it. Apparently, bad marine biologist journalist there. But there was a big to do about it. And so there was, James Cameron spoke, and finally on December 22nd, a story came out. I've got it here on Yahoo News. and a number of stories came out. There was a vegan blog that had it as well, where it basically says James Cameron kind of spoke out and kind of commented on the show, but through his friend, Brian Scary, who worked alongside Cameron on a National Geographic series of Secrets of the Whales in 2021. And so he shared the email saying, hey, like, here's what happened. And he said he's been impressed. So this is Mr. Scary. So Brian Scary said he's impressed by the Avatar 2 director's focus on planetary saving measures and interests in ocean exploration, because there's a lot in that movie about that. He says, unless he's got me really buffaloed here, I really think that he's genuine about this. I cannot imagine that if he knew that there was going to be a dolphin show that he would have agreed to it. I think it's a bit of a blindside and really unfortunate incident. So what did James Cameron say to his friend? And so there's an email between the two, and the pair both shared portions of the email publicly on Facebook. So this is what James Cameron said. He said, we were on a whirlwind publicity tour for Avatar, The Way of the Water, across multiple countries, and I was getting whisked along from one appearance and interview to another for a week straight, literally going 20 to 30 interviews a day. That's what the email said. He says, I got handed a schedule that showed as my first 6 stops of the day a fan event at an aquarium, and I was visualizing something like Monterey Bay Aquarium with its great science and conservation program. Shout out to Monterey Bay Aquarium. They do have a lot of research, a lot of conservation and science programs out there. So he goes, there was zero mention of a dolphin show in the pamphlet. I literally found out there was a dolphin show as we were walking out on the stage, where we were already out in the lights and fans were cheering. I said something snide on the mic, like I'm sure the dolphins were all asked for their consent to be part of the show or something like that. And he goes, I was seething. He said, but I didn't want to create a big public incident. Maybe I should have in retrospect, but my instinct is always to meet people where they are, which is the whole point of Avatar, The Way of the Water, to shift consciousness. So he says, in another section of the email, that received the Mr. Cameron's this is what the article is saying. It says, when you see the movie, you'll see that it's all about saving whales and treating them with empathy as equals. It's the pivotal message of the film. So there's obviously no way I would have agreed to standing in front of a show based on captive dolphins. He then urges people to rethink their seafood intake. He goes, he goes on about an estimated 650,000 dolphins and whales are killed or seriously injured by massive fishing fleets every year. So if people really want to save dolphins, they should put down the damn tuna melt. This is a quote from them. And in fact, stop eating fish altogether and stick to plant-based proteins, as I have for the last 10 years. I wanted you to know this was a faux pas outside my ability to foresee or prevent, and that I'm really sorry about it, or that I'm sorry about it. So this is what he's saying to Brian Scary, who he's worked on documentaries, like environmental documentaries about saving whales. And so it's very obvious that he didn't want this to happen. He didn't plan on it. I think what happens is a lot of people see these promotions, especially as a person of the stature of James Cameron, who has a lot of control in Hollywood. But let's be honest, when they're promoting a show, when they're promoting a movie, they're at the helm of the different countries they go to and what they want to put on. And these promoters want to put on a huge event. They want to show what they have. And in Japan, from my understanding, when you have dolphins at an aquarium or you have marine mammals at an aquarium, that becomes a big part of the show. People go there to see the marine mammals. People are curious. And so, although I don't agree with the way, the whole captivity, marine mammals in captivity in general, I get where James Cameron's coming from. He does a lot for the environment. He definitely does a lot for the environment. And we'll get into that in a minute, but it's very complex to navigate, doing these promotional tours. You're not in charge of the planning. You show up, you promote, you do an interview, you talk to people. There's maybe a show, there might be something special going on, fireworks, all this kind of stuff that is out of their control. They don't have a say in it, right? At this point, so how, and they're not told of what's happening. A lot of it's a surprise. A lot of it's, on the promotions event tour, and they do it. They're the promotional company who's doing it, and so they just don't know really what's about to happen. So I can see where he's stuck. The other thing is from my knowledge, is that the Japanese are a proud people. They don't like to be disrespected, especially in front of a lot of people. So when you walk out, when James Cameron and the actors and actresses walk out onto a platform, you're pretty much stuck with everything that's about to happen. You're not going to tell them to stop. You're not going to tell them this and that. And there is a quote from in another article that I saw that he did say, that James Cameron did say, I assume all of the dolphins gave their permission to be in the show, which was obviously a sarcastic comment. It's basically saying, hey, these are captive dolphins. This isn't right. You need to work with them. You need to get their permission to do this, but we know that you don't have it. And that's all he said. And he regrets it. He even says he's sorry. In retrospect, he should have said more. He should have maybe canceled the show. There could have been a lot of things that he might have been able to do, but it's difficult to do that when everything's moving so quickly, right? And maybe in retrospect, he could have said something more and saying, hey, you know what? I don't want this dolphin show. We can just do the talk in front of this tank, but I'm not doing this dolphin show. And I'm sure a lot of people would have respected that a lot more. I'm sure he would have gotten in trouble to attend an aquarium where there are captive marine mammals. And again, when you're in other countries, you are not in the same control. You don't have the same level of control as you would maybe in the US and Canada. In the US and Canada, he's probably familiar with a lot of the aquariums, as he spoke about, Monterey Bay Aquarium. It's a little bit naive to think that every aquarium is like Monterey Bay Aquarium. Even aquariums within North America are not like Monterey Bay Aquarium. Many of them actually. And so that, you're kind of saying, hey, I thought it would just be like that. Well, that doesn't actually happen in a lot of places, even within North America or Canada, US, Mexico. It's very difficult to get that level of research and science and an aquarium. Or you don't see it as often as you say you should or would, or you hope to see. And that's a shout out to Monterey Bay Aquarium, because they're just an amazing aquarium. And there's a lot of research that goes on there. So it's a difficult thing to handle. But James Cameron does a lot for the environment. He's a vegan, so on a personal level, he does a lot by refusing to eat meat, dairy products, and so forth, to protect animals and do better for climate change. So that's obviously something that he's taken as a big change in his lifestyle about 10 years ago, and he says he continues to do that right now. I think he says he doesn't call himself a vegan, but more of I guess a future eater, I think is what it is. I don't know the exact term, but he eats so that we can have more in the future. And so he does that. I know for a fact that he was consulted during the Deep Sea Horizon spill on his expertise in deep sea exploration and work in the deep sea and submersibles. So he helped work to protect the Gulf of Mexico. He was brought in by the other environmentalists. He works with Nat Geo. I talked about just through this article in Yahoo News that where he worked with Nat Geo, or worked on a couple of projects with Nat Geo that involved documentaries. So speaking out for the ocean and speaking up for the ocean through those documentaries. The movie Avatar in itself is a marine conservation message, where he talks about whale conservation and the what's bad about harvesting whales and so forth. He even talks about how to go about conservation. It can be difficult sometimes, and there's a lot of complexity to it. And I know there is a project that doesn't get talked about enough, where there's this product called, it's a submersible, but it's like a handheld submersible that's tethered, and it's basically used. It's almost like an underwater drone. It is an underwater drone, but it's smaller. It's more for personal use, or for uses for people to do marine conservation work. That was the idea. And James Cameron bought 1,000 of them to give out to different countries and different people in different countries to be able to do more marine conservation work. And there were a lot of projects that were funded by charities and so forth in workshops to be able to teach how people can break those items down and rebuild them and maintain them so that that they can use them for a long time. Now, 1,000 drones that are probably around like the $1,500 or $2,000 mark is not a big deal for a person who's as rich as James Cameron to buy. But he did do that. And he did it to spread the ability for people to do marine conservation. And I think that's really important. And I think, we need to give him props for that and to be able to do that. And this message, I wanted to start this story off this year in 2023 for a particular reason, is because conservation is not easy. And nobody should be expected to be perfect, right? Nobody should be expected to not make mistakes, not be able to control everything. We still have to live our lives. We still have to spread messages around. We still have to make money. We still have to survive. And unfortunately, a lot of that is within a system that is broken in terms of protecting the environment. But to be able to do that, we have to move forth. To be able for me to spread this message to you, I need to buy items like a microphone, like a boom arm, a recorder, a computer, and all that, in order to be able to get the message to many people, right? And I've been able, through this podcast, to change the lives of some people, which makes me happy. And it makes it worthwhile, even though I would prefer a microphone and a boom arm and a recorder and a computer that was perfectly sustainable. And hopefully one day we will get there. But we can't always just be perfect to be able to move towards that. And I wanted to start off the year with this story because I think it shows a lot. I mean, James Cameron, I just told you, has done a lot for speaking up for the ocean, including on a personal level, right? Including having that message through, a billion-dollar movie, multi-billion-dollar movie to make in Avatar, and the message was marine conservation. You don't get that everywhere, right? That movie in its opening weekend made like $500 million. Whether it was a movie that was successful or that broke even or whatever, he's changed the game in not only movie making, but also putting marine conservation at the forefront of a message of something that's really, really important. And I think that is something that we need to consider when we look at people who maybe make some mistakes, maybe may not have as much control over their work, over their promotions, over the type of car they work on or the type of car they drive. It's not always easy, right? It's not always an easy thing to do, but we can do better and we can always strive to do better. And I think this happens a lot in marine conservation where people get judged, especially people who are in the public eye. People get judged for things that happen to them that are out of their control, or maybe mistakes that they make. And they judge them, and I think we're in such a world where we're like, oh, well, that's brutal. They should have done this and we have such opinions on them. And yet we ignore the fact that they do other things. And I know that's not an excuse that just because they do other things, they should be, that gives them the excuse to kind of mess up or do things on purpose that are bad for the environment. But let's be honest here, nothing is perfect. We can't expect everybody to be perfect. And although, marine mammal captivity is wrong and should be banned everywhere, it's not. And there's a lot of work to do around the world to do that. And maybe we can take this story and use it as a way to get more, more publicity about the whale captivity in Asia and the increasing number of aquariums that have more and more marine mammals in Asia. Then to say, hey, this director who's pretty much spent a good portion of his life around water and around the ocean and saving it, and spreading good messages, this guy made a mistake. So, either we need to cancel or he needs to make up for his mistake. I think as a marine conservation, group, as a marine conservation society, as people who want to do better, I think we need to have more understanding for what's happening here. Although we shouldn't expect or encourage people to do things the wrong way, I think we should have an understanding of sometimes, especially in the world we live in today, to be able to get a message out like Avatar: The Way of the Water. We need to do some things that are out of our control, or things might happen out of our control. And even James Cameron admits it. In retrospect, maybe he should have said something, or maybe he shouldn't have attended the event as soon as he saw what happened. But I think, it's very difficult to judge somebody on a split-second decision, right? And, I've seen comments saying, oh, he's greedy, he's just doing it for the money, he's just doing it for the success. Yeah, probably. He's probably just doing it for the success, and he probably needs to make the money back. He spent a lot of money. Avatar is a different movie. Avatar is a very different movie. But this is going to be seen forever. This is going to be seen by people for the next 10 to 20 years, right? And if he makes another one, it's going to build on that message. And I think it goes to show where we have this complexity in conservation and how we need to really do something about it. And just to cap it off, even in the movie, here's a spoiler. So if you don't want to be spoiled from the movie and you want to watch the movie, don't really listen to this part, okay? But, so here's the spoiler. In the movie, there is a marine biologist that is on the human side. And these humans have been hunting these whales. And the marine biologist is helping the humans hunt the whales. Not with the hunt, but extracting a specific, a specific liquid, let's just say, without giving too much away, from these sort of alien, new planet, Pandora whales. And it's tragic to see these whales. They're very connected to the people that are, or the aliens that we're talking about, or that are centered around the story and so forth. And the marine biologist is kind of stuck in the middle. He respects the animals. He's been studying the animals. He knows their behavior. He knows their biology. He knows how they work for the most part. And he wants to protect them. And you even see some of the comments that he makes during these hunts about, don't underestimate these animals. They're very bright. They're very sensitive. They're very intelligent. We've seen all this type of talk before, through this show. And all of a sudden, he gets caught up in the human side. He gets caught up with the bad guys, but he's a marine biologist. He loves the animals. He loves studying the animals, but he's caught up in a resource usage of these animals. And I can imagine, you could probably extrapolate that to biologists working in the private environmental consulting field. Where, yes, they are there to protect animals, but they rarely work on conservation jobs. They work on jobs and projects where they are working to help, industry. A lot of them are resource extracting industry to follow the regulations, the environmental regulations, but eventually are going to disrupt or disturb the ocean in some sort of manner. Whether it be oil and gas industry, whether it be a mining industry, whether it even be a renewable energy industry, like wind power in the ocean, right? So these scientists are helping to ensure to protect the environment while these projects are going on. But let's be honest, like anything with the fossil fuel, it can be quite destructive, right? Accidents happen. The actual extraction is a destructive nature. Think about deep sea mining that's going to happen soon if it's not already happening in some places around the world. All these things are destructive, but there are scientists who work there on these projects that make it even more destructive, or allow, they're protecting certain things, but for a destructive force. And that can bother people, right? And that is a part of, sometimes it's like it's the only job available for marine biologists to do. Not everybody does it for their entire lives. A lot of people get out of it because of these reasons, because of the sort of the ethics of working with industry and so forth. And it is what it is. And so I think, looking at what happened here to James Cameron, going back to this story, it's complex. It's not easy. You don't have control over everything. And the world works the way it does. We want to change that. And hopefully this story will kind of bring that news to people to change that. But it happens with the people. It happens with the people listening to this podcast. You, myself. It's always happens with the people. The people who might be in Japan who are listening to this podcast and being like, oh yeah, maybe we shouldn't have captive dolphins. Maybe I should look into that more or educate myself more on why we shouldn't. Right? These are the things that happen. But I respect James Cameron for coming out and talking about this, whether it be through an email or he's doing it himself. I respect the way he treated the incident in terms of how he reacted. And I know a lot of you are going to have differing opinions, and I respect that as well. I'd love to hear from you. If you go to my Instagram at SpeakUpForBlue and DM me, I would love to hear from you. You can also email me if you just go to speakupforblue.com and just hit the contact us page. You can email me as well. So, that's the end of this story. Love to hear your opinion on it, because that's what this story is. This podcast is about starting a conversation, so I'd love to hear your opinion. And tune in next to the next time, next episode, because I'm going to be talking about speaking up for the ocean and how you should be doing that in 2023. And then I'm going to be talking about what I'm going to be doing in 2023 on Friday's episode. So stay tuned. If you're new to this podcast, subscribe, follow, whatever you need to do so you don't miss another episode. And thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Speak Up for the Ocean Blue podcast. I am your host, Andrew Lewin. Have a great day. We'll talk to you next time, and happy conservation.